Have you ever noticed how life has a way of ambushing you when you least expect it? You can do everything by the book plan it meticulously. Prepare for it. Train relentlessly. Keep your focus razor sharpened, yet, out of nowhere, life can still throw a punch that knocks the breath right out of you. The job you counted on disappears. The person you trusted walks away without a second glance. The plan you built your dreams around crumbles into dust without warning. And just like that, what once felt stable now feels like a battlefield. But here's the truth most people never see coming. In that brutal moment, you face a choice. You can let it define you, break you, convince you that this is all you'll ever be. Or you can let it refine you. That's the invisible line, the line that separates those who stay stuck from those who rise. And the Stoics? They understood this better than anyone. They didn't spend their days wishing away hardship. They prepared for it. They trained their minds not just to endure the fall, but to grow through it. And if that's the kind of person you're building yourself into, resilient, clear, unshakably powerful, you are exactly where you need to be. Let's talk about how to take your setbacks and transform them into something more, something stronger. When everything begins to fall apart, most people don't reach for courage, they reach for comfort. Not the healing kind, but the kind that numbs, that hides. They pick petty fights that don't matter. They bury themselves in distractions that keep their minds busy but leave their souls frozen. It's easier to pretend everything's fine than to admit you're not. Easier to blame someone else than to face the mirror. But here's the hard truth. Avoidance doesn't save you. It traps you. And the longer you run from the wreckage, the longer you stay buried under it. The Stoics had a word for this kind of false shield. Apathy, a state of clarity that comes not from ignoring pain, but from understanding it. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And that reaction, that first fragile step forward, always begins with truth. Not the polished version you tell your friends to save face. Not the sugar-coated story you whisper to yourself to avoid feeling foolish. The truth is raw and unfiltered as you can handle it. So stop hiding behind the noise. Sit down, get quiet. Not everything needs to be fixed today, but it does need to be faced. What actually happened? Not how it felt. What occurred? Did you silence your intuition when it tried to warn you? Did you tolerate what you should have walked away from? Did you keep hoping something would fix itself when deep down you knew it wouldn't? Those answers might sting, but that sting, that's your starting line. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Think about that. Every setback you ignore, every truth you bury, becomes a shadow that follows you into the next chapter and the next. You'll call it bad luck. You'll call it someone else's fault. But the truth is, it was always a truth you refused to own. This isn't about shame. It's not about punishing yourself or dragging old wounds into the present. It's about control. It's about refusing to let the same pattern write your future. Socrates believed that the unexamined life is not worth living. That wasn't some dramatic, philosophical exaggeration. It was practical. If you don't stop to reflect, if you don't dissect what went wrong, you're doomed to repeat it different day. Same pain, just dressed in a new disguise. And here's where the real strength comes in. Writing it down. No filters, no edits, just the truth. This is what I did. This is what I missed. This is what I allowed. This is what I avoided. Not to stay trapped in the past, but to finally leave it behind. When your pen hits the page, something shifts. The fog lifts. The emotions lose their grip. And suddenly, you're not just someone who got knocked down, you're someone who's learning how to rise stronger. Plato once wrote, "Truth is the beginning of every good thing." So let this be your beginning. You don't need perfect clarity all at once. You don't need to fix it all today. But you do need to stop pretending. Because clarity isn't gifted to you. It's carved on brutally honest word at a time. There's a quiet trap most people fall into after life hits them hard. It doesn't come with sirens or flashing warning signs. It slips in subtly, quietly, whispering, "This is who you are now." One mistake, one failure, one collapse, and suddenly, your entire identity wraps itself around that event. You stop saying, "I failed." You start saying, "I am a failure." And that shift, that's dangerous. Because the moment you accept that lie, you start living down to it. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. The same goes for failure. If you keep seeing yourself as the mistake, you'll keep showing up like it's the only thing you have to offer. That missed opportunity, that heartbreak, that rejection, it becomes the lens through which you see everything else. And the more you wear that lens, the heavier it becomes. But here's what the Stoics understood, and what most forget. Who you are is not what happened to you. It's what you choose to do with it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. You can't always control the setback, but you do control the meaning you assign to it. And that meaning, it shapes everything. Think about it. You didn't lose your worth because someone walked away. You didn't become broken because something didn't go your way. You hit a wall, but that doesn't mean you stop walking. That's just life doing what it does, testing what you're made of. The moment you realize your value doesn't live in results, but in your response, everything shifts. That job you lost? It taught you something. That mistake? It exposed a weakness and gave you a map to grow. But none of it, not one piece of it, gets to define you unless you hand over the pen. So stop giving your identity away to events. Stop calling yourself names based on a chapter you haven't even finished reading. Start asking better questions. Start with this. What would I do today if I didn't believe this setback defined me? Would you take the risk again? Would you speak up? Would you walk into that room differently? Socrates said, "The way to gain a good reputation is to endeavor to be what you desire to appear." That means showing up now as the person you want to become, not waiting for proof, not waiting for permission. You get to act from belief, not from memory. Because who you were in the fall is not who you have to be in the rise. You are not your worst day. You are not the moment you lost control. You are the builder who gets back up, the architect who starts again, the student who learns, who evolves. And no one, not your past, not their opinions, not even your fear gets to decide otherwise. You've been through something. Yes. But you are not done. You are not over. And you are most certainly not defined by the dust. You are defined by the rebuild. And that rebuild? It starts the moment you stop confusing who you are with what you've been through. In the last section, we uncovered the hard truth. Your identity isn't shaped by the setback, it's shaped by how you choose to rise after it. Now, let's go even deeper into the battlefield of the mind, where the words you use can either chain you to the past or unlock the path to your future. Here's something most people miss entirely. Your reason doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to sound impressive to the world. It just has to be powerful enough to matter more than your fear, more than your frustration, more than the endless excuses pulling you back into the comfort of staying small. Plato once said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." And reconnecting to your why, that's where that battle begins. It's strange, isn't it? How the smallest words often carry the heaviest weight. Sometimes, it's not even what happened that holds us back. It's the way we describe it. The way we keep replaying it to ourselves in the quiet moments when no one's around to hear but us. And that story? It can either become a cage or a key. It either keeps us trapped, circling the same old pain, or it opens a door to something new. Aristotle once wrote, "Speech is the representation of the experiences of the mind." And he wasn't just talking about language, he was talking about creation itself. The words you choose don't just describe your world, they shape it. If you keep calling yourself broken, your behavior will begin to match that identity. If you say, "I'm stuck," your energy will shrink, your decisions will tighten, your possibilities will disappear. And suddenly, you really are stuck. Not because of the problem itself, but because of the phrase you attach to it. The Stoics understood this with brutal clarity. Epictetus taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And what he meant was simple: your language creates emotional loops. If your vocabulary is soaked in defeat, your mindset becomes one of retreat. But if you deliberately frame your words around rebuilding, progress, clarity, even in the middle of chaos, you give yourself a way forward. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you started thinking like someone who still believes there's something worth fighting for. Seneca once wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." Think about that. Every time you speak about your life, whether to others or just to yourself, you're feeding something. You're either feeding fear or you're feeding strength. And it's subtle. It hides in tiny throwaway phrases like, "Nothing ever works out for me," or "This always happens." Say them enough, and your mind builds a home there. Keep repeating them, and you forget you ever had the right to speak any differently. But the shift? It starts small. It starts by replacing "I'm lost" with "I'm searching." Replacing "I failed" with "I learned." Not to lie to yourself, but to lead yourself. Socrates once said, "The greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be." In other words, speak like the person you want to become. Use words that stretch you forward, not ones that drag you back into the mud. This doesn't mean ignoring what happened. It means narrating it from a place of power. You don't say, I lost everything. You say, I'm starting again this time, with more wisdom. You don't say, I'm broken. You say, I'm healing. And in doing so, you remind your nervous system that movement is still possible, that your identity is still evolving, that your story is far from over. Because here's the deeper truth language, is strategy. It's one of the most overlooked tools of recovery. Plato said, the beginning is the most important part of the work. And often, that beginning doesn't come from some grand decision or flawless plan. It comes from a sentence. One better sentence, spoken daily until your mindset catches up, until your habits follow, until your life begins to shift. It's funny how, when life knocks us flat, our minds immediately race toward the big fix. We think we need to make a dramatic move, take the leap, reinvent everything overnight. But that's not how real change works. Not when you're in the pit. Not when everything inside you is just trying to remember how to breathe. When you're low, it's not the big leap that saves you, it's the small step. The ordinary, unglamorous, steady step forward. The Stoics had no patience for drama. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He wasn't talking about climbing mountains in a day. He was talking about movement in the face of resistance. He was talking about putting one foot in front of the other, especially when you don't feel ready. That's the secret. Action doesn't wait for motivation, it creates it. We often overlook the power of tiny wins. You clean one drawer, suddenly your space feels lighter. You send one message you've been avoiding, your mind clears. You take a 10-minute walk and, somehow, your energy shifts. It's not magic, it's momentum. And momentum doesn't come from breakthroughs, it comes from repetition, from basics, from daily, deliberate effort. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Let that sink in. You don't become strong by talking about change. You become strong by stacking small acts of integrity. By doing the thing especially when no one's watching. Especially when it doesn't look impressive. Because consistency is louder than any comeback speech. Plato believed that the beginning is the most important part of the work. And yet, it's the part most people skip. They wait until they feel ready. Wait for clarity. Wait for a sign. Wait until the fog clears. But readiness doesn't show up on its own, it's built. One action at a time. One checked box. One completed task. That's how your brain begins to trust you again. That's how your nervous system shifts from shutdown to motion. So ask yourself, what's one small win I can earn today? Not 10. Not a life overhaul. Just one. Can you drink a glass of water first thing in the morning? Can you reply to that message you've been dodging? Can you put your phone down and breathe for 5 minutes? If the answer is yes, do it. If the answer is no, choose something even smaller. Because it's not about the size of the action, it's about the signal it sends. I'm still in this. Aristotle taught, we become just by performing just actions, temperate by performing temperate actions, brave by performing brave actions. In other words, identity is earned, not wished for. You don't wait until you feel like the person you want to become. You act like them, though in small, unglamorous ways. You don't rebuild by shouting into the void. You rebuild by doing the dishes, by showing up to the workout, by finishing the thing you promised yourself you'd finish. Let go of the idea that it has to be dramatic to count. The real comeback doesn't start when the spotlight hits. It starts in the quiet, uncelebrated moments where you choose to move not perfectly, just honestly. Because movement is what unlocks belief. And belief? Belief is what rewrites everything. In the last part, we explored how discipline isn't about dramatic gestures. It's about the small, honest steps that rebuild not just your life, but your belief in yourself. Now, let's lean into a deeper truth. Discipline isn't a rigid cage. It's freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you know, deep in your bones, that you are someone who can be trusted. Someone who keeps their promises, especially to themselves. This is where real power lives. It's when your actions stop being ruled by moods and start being driven by meaning. Socrates once said, "The secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." And that's exactly what daily discipline is. It's not about wrestling with the past anymore. It's about laying bricks for the future, even if those bricks are small. Even if they look unimpressive right now. Over time, those bricks form something unshakable. A foundation. A life that doesn't crumble at the first sign of pressure, because it was built with intention, not emotion. There's a moment after every hard fall where silence creeps in. But it's not the peaceful kind. It's the heavy kind. Like a fog sitting on your chest, pressing down, making it hard to breathe or think clearly. And in that silence, pain begins to speak. First, it whispers, then louder, until it's impossible to ignore. Most people, they try to mute that voice. They numb it with distractions, drown it out with scrolling, overwork themselves into exhaustion because facing pain head-on. That takes a kind of bravery most never practice. But if you want more than recovery, if you want to grow, then you have to stop avoiding the lesson pain is trying to bring you. The Stoics never saw pain as punishment. They saw it as preparation. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." They believed pain isn't something to flee. It's something to explore, to lean into. Because pain is information. It shows you where you've been, asleep at the wheel. It reveals the cracks in your foundation. It exposes where your standards slipped, or where your voice stayed silent too long. So, ask yourself the hard, uncomfortable questions. What is this pain here to teach me? Did you stay in something too long, simply because it was familiar? Did you ignore your intuition to keep the peace? Did you hope the tension would magically disappear if you ignored it long enough? These aren't accusations, they're invitations. And if you're brave enough to answer them honestly, you'll gain more clarity than any self-help book could ever offer. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Growth doesn't live in comfort. Comfort keeps you exactly where you are. Pain forces reflection. It sharpens your awareness. It demands that you look at what's broken, not to dwell there, but to understand it, clean it out, and make sure you don't carry it forward into the next chapter." Plato once said, "All learning has an emotional base. Pain is emotional, but it's also a form of learning if you're willing to sit with it. Not dramatize it, not spiral in it. Just sit, still and curious, and ask, what is this showing me about myself? Because beneath the sting, there's almost always a mirror. One that reflects not the version of you that you pretended to be, but the one you really are, and the one you could still become. This isn't about loving pain, it's about learning from it, using it, letting it carve space inside you for something better. Because at the end of the day, it's not the fall that changes you, it's the decision to face it with your eyes wide open and rise anyway. And here's where the next trap lies. After the storm, there's a strange pressure to rush back to normal, to become the person you were before everything fell apart. But pause for a second and ask yourself, why would you want to go back to being the version of you that couldn't survive the storm? That version didn't make it through. You did. Bent? Maybe. Bruised? Definitely. But still standing, still learning, still here. And that matters more than you realize. Because every scar you carry taught you something. About your limits, about what you'll never accept again. The Stoics believed adversity wasn't just an obstacle, it was the furnace that shapes character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." So don't waste the fire trying to erase the signs of it. Use it. Use it to forge someone wiser, someone clearer, someone newer. The key is not to bounce back. It's to evolve forward. Let go of who you were pretending to be before the storm. Let go of the habits that led you to burnout, the relationships that blurred your boundaries, the thinking that made you shrink. Start asking instead, what kind of person do I want to be now? After everything I've seen. Aristotle believed, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And after everything you've been through, you know more about yourself now than ever. What you tolerate, what you need, where your real strength lives. And that knowledge, it's not just insight, it's leverage. Use it. Use it to set new standards for how you show up, for what you accept, for what you expect from others, and, most importantly, from yourself. That old version of you, it had excuses. It had patterns that kept repeating. It had fears dressed up as logic. But you, now, you've outgrown all that. You walk differently. You think deeper. You speak with more intention. And if you haven't started doing those things yet, now's the time. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." And the greatest power you have? The ability to decide who you become after everything you've lost. Define it. Don't let the past decide for you. Don't live like the wound is still open. Say it out loud if you have to. The new version of me walks like this, talks like this, moves like this, and then act accordingly. With your habits, with your choices, with your energy. Let the old identity fade, not out of shame, but because you've outlived it. Socrates taught that the soul should always be improving itself. Not just reacting to the world, but reshaping from the inside out. That's your job now, to lead yourself not back to safety, but forward into strength. Not to what was, but into what's next. Because you didn't just survive the storm, you became someone new inside it. And that version? That's the one worth building on.